Thought we'd take a couple minutes and look at the character of the out-of-state and foreign developers who are pushing incorporation in Tusayan. You know, they've been perpetrating a series of lies against local residents and community leaders, and I've got a theory as to why. I think they want you paying attention to other people. They don't want you paying attention to who they've been running around with and the shenanigans they've been up to over the last few years. And I guess when you lie as much as they do, you just go with what you know and keep on lying. Starting with the biggest lie of all, that you need to incorporate Tusayan to get housing. It's a lie. This has nothing to do with that. Do you really think these super rich developers care about whether or not you have a house in Tusayan? No, it's about them creating and then controlling a small town council.
Look at this document from the Washington State Public Disclosure Commission. In it, staff recommends referring a case to Washington State's Attorney General, a case in which Elling Halverson is accused of trying to hide the actual source of contributions to city council candidates in Des Moines, Washington.
So why would Mr. Halverson make these contributions, and why would he try to hide them? Well, it's because he didn't like the current makeup at that time of the Des Moines, Washington City Council. By the way, that's how it's said in Washington, Des Moines, not like Iowa where it's Des Moines. He didn't like them because they didn't like his plans to build a conveyor to bring fill dirt in to create a third runway at Seattle-Tacoma Airport. The reason why people didn't want that third runway? Well, environmental concerns. Sound familiar? Yeah. Coconino County and Coconino County voters have shot down the Halversons and the Percassis, that's the Italians, many times on environmental concerns.
Des Moines, Washington is 30,000 people, and Halverson tried to buy influence in a city council election there. What makes you think he won't try to run roughshod over a Tusayan town council, a town of fewer than 500 people?
You gotta give the Italians credit for one thing, though. They were honest on one issue. You remember that Wall Street Journal article we were talking about a couple of weeks ago? Let's go back to that. Here's what it had to say.
Percassi, that's the Italians, wooed businessman Elling Halverson, a local hotel and aviation tour owner. They hit upon a strategy to jumpstart development, create a city council with power over taxes, zoning, and services. A committee led by employees of Mr. Halverson, but funded by Percassi, collected signatures to get the incorporation issue on the ballot, and they crafted boundaries that included 354 acres of outlying Percassi-owned land. Now, also from that article, a guy from the Percassi group is quoted as saying, "Percassi has Plan B and Plan C. Mr. Percassi won't give up. It's a question of pride. We have the only private land in the area, and there's only one Grand Canyon."
Yeah, they were honest about that, but guess what Plan B and C are? To lie, and to lie some more. Let's take Clarinda Vale for an example.
In their latest video, they show a cell phone tower and accuse her of taking the school's cell phone tower. The school land in a hypothetical town of Tusayan hasn't even been zoned yet. How could she be stealing their cell phone tower?
What are they talking about? And who's done more for the school than Clarinda Vale? Well before she was on the school board, she was working on state and federal legislation that brought new funding to the school, that brought new land to the school, but that doesn't stop the pro-incorporation people from lying. As a matter of fact, on their website, they claimed that Clarinda went to the school and talked to third graders about incorporation, and tisk tisk, how could she? Well, problem was it was a lie. School officials called them up and told them to take it off their website, and guess what? They finally did.
They'll stop at nothing and tear Tusayan apart until they get what they want. Clarinda's house has also been a subject of their ridiculous videos. I've been in Clarinda's house, and so have many people who live in Tusayan. It's not big, it's a nice house, but it's very average-sized, and it's certainly not made of glass. And what they won't talk about is how Clarinda lived in this tiny 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, 700-square-foot house for 20 years.
Nice accommodations for the Queen of Tusayan, as they like to call her. By the way, does anybody remember the last house that was built in Tusayan before Clarinda's? I do.
This house, which is bigger and owned by a Halverson. It sits empty most of the year, though. That's because the Halversons don't live in Tusayan. As a matter of fact, Mr. Halverson lives in this house in Washington State. Whew. Now that's big. At least we didn't need to take a helicopter out of its normal flight path to snoop on someone's private property. This one I just got from Google Maps.
These people will lie, they'll try and fix elections, they'll ruin reputations, they'll do whatever they need to do to get what they want, including trying to stop a U.S. service member from being able to vote. That's right, someone who wears the uniform and has been fighting terrorism overseas for a number of years. For you and me, they don't want him to vote. They think they heard that he might be against incorporation. So Canyon Shearer, who's with the U.S. Air Force and has maintained his hometown voter registration as many service members do, they don't want him voting. Nice people.
And these are the people you're going to trust to fulfill their promises of housing? The Italian-owned Kotzen land just outside of Tusayan could be used for housing right now. But they haven't built any housing there.
Maybe we don't want them building housing. Have you seen some of the ideas they came up with in the past? Man camps? Now that sounds like fun. Man camps, until you find out it's 8 men in a room. Not much fun unless you like serving on a submarine. And, their plans last time for housing when Tusayan had incorporation on the ballot, they proposed them in a floodplain. Good idea. So, if they're not going to build housing, and maybe we don't want them to, they're going to build those grocery stores and the pharmacies and the gas stations that are going to get you all of that competition and the lower prices, right? Well, the store that they've proposed in the past to build was actually an outlet mall for Benetton. Have you heard of the United Colors of Benetton?
The Benetton clothing empire, which ran ads showing things like AIDS lesions on the faces of American presidents, horses having sex, and priests and nuns kissing.
What a wonderful company. And you can look forward to some really nice signage in Tusayan. But then again, these people aren't known for running in the best of circles. Do you know who's running their campaign? Policy Development Group. This $250,000 campaign is run by a company that's owned by a guy by the name of Ron Ober. Now, Ron was a former friend and a close ally of Charlie Keating. Yes, that Charlie Keating of the Keating Five, whose, involvement with politicians ended up costing taxpayers millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, and had many seniors lose their entire retirement. Quality guy, and you gotta wonder what Ron's got in store for Tusayan.
Incorporating now will create massive town budget deficits immediately. It makes more sense to incorporate later in the year, not near the beginning. That's the findings of the committee that studied incorporation for years. But are the financial problems of a new Tusayan really the concerns of the Italian developers or the Halversons?
Oh, and one last thing. Incorporation supporters are being investigated by the Arizona Attorney General's office for shenanigans they pulled the last incorporation election. So let's review here. I'm going to get my notes out so I don't get this wrong. If 5 of the 6 residents who studied Tusayan incorporation for years are concerned with the economic viability of incorporation, and if Elling Halverson has already been caught red-handed trying to influence the elections in another state, and if he and his partners in this whole scheme, the Percassi group, the Italians, have the ability to build housing right now but are holding out for incorporation, and if they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to lie about and try to destroy the reputation of local residents, and if pro-incorporation forces are associating with and using the services of companies like Benetton and the Policy Development Group, don't you think you should ask yourself, why am I voting for this? You know what? I'm sure you will.